Hi, it's Pastor Andy again, and another video for you this week. Today, Monday, April the 20th, I want to talk about a little bit about what we did last night. But before I do that, I want to share that we are renaming these videos as we've been doing these videos now for about the last month. We've called them the daily updates, and we've covered a variety of things. And we're still going to be kind of in a hodgepodge of what we cover here, but we're going to call these signposts from now on. And you'll see that when you see the thumbnail as the lead into this video. But we're looking at past, present, and future. And that's what we talked about last night in our first meeting of that group at 6 o'clock. And when I say that group, you're invited, you're welcome. It's for our church, but really it's going to be talking about the church with the concentration on our church, but some of the changes that we need to make going forward. And so the idea of signposts it fits our general theme of our GPS, God's path for servants, and GPS. Obviously, we think of that as the way to track where we are and where we're going. But our strategy is based on the word journey, and our actions that we take to fulfill our strategy are called steps. And so, and our prayer focus is called waypoint. Which is kind of like a checkpoint, if you will. So it just fits. And so signposts, I should say, point us in a direction. So last night was the first discussion. And before I go any further, I gave them homework. So if you didn't come, you can still do the homework. The homework is to look at the early church. I know about a year and a half ago as a church, we looked at the first several chapters in Acts and went through what the early church looked like in a series that I entitled The Church in HD, in high definition. And we took a pretty close look at what the church did, but we need to do that now in a fresh way, in a new way, and determine what it is that we need to be doing and what we can do. Again, Governor Parson said that he's extending the current stay-at-home order through May 3rd, so that's one more Sunday, and then maybe May 10th we're meeting, but regardless, it will be several weeks. And so this is a reset, as I've talked about in the past. This isn't a pause and just pick up where we're going. This is a complete stop and reset. So we have an opportunity to do some things differently. So, but whatever we do needs to be centered around what God would have us to do. And so, as I mentioned last night, there's three aspects to what we do as a church, and one of them is about Jesus's promise. Jesus said, "I will build my church." It is not us that are building what He wants to do. It is He that is building it. We're just partners within that process. It is Jesus' purpose that we are involved in that, but ultimately His purpose is not about the church. It's about expanding His kingdom. As I mentioned before, in the Gospels, the word church is mentioned 3 times. In the 4 Gospels combined, it's mentioned 3 times. Once in Matthew 16, twice in Matthew 18. But the word kingdom is mentioned about 120 times. So the focus is on the kingdom, but the church is an important tool for that. So it's about Jesus. It's about Jesus fulfilling His promise. It's about carrying out the purpose that Jesus has. But finally, Jesus's priority, the Great Commission, is for us to make disciples. And so as we think about whatever we do and however we do it, that needs to be the focus, not programs, not events, not whatever, and not that any of that's wrong, but that really needs to be our focus in particular as we go forward. We've all reprioritized some things in our life. If you would have told any one of us 6 months ago that we wouldn't go to church on Sunday, and I know that's true for maybe some watching this, but generally speaking, the audience watching this, they would have said, no way, that's a priority for me on Sunday morning. Or if you would have said that you wouldn't go to the store, you wouldn't go out to eat, or you wouldn't go see your family, or you think about if this lasts for just a few more weeks, think about not getting together on Mother's Day. Most of us would say, well, that's absurd. We would never do that. But how many birthdays and other family get-togethers have already been canceled? Vacations have already been canceled, et cetera. So the idea, again, we have reprioritized our life. And a part of that, we need to reprioritize the church. And you say, so why now? Why now? Well, again, this is something that I shared with the group last night, but just as a part of this signpost, the past is the past. The present, we're navigating, we're dealing with, we're adapting. Pivoting is the big word that I hear everywhere. We're pivoting, we're pivoting, we're pivoting. And I've done several pivots, like on my podcast and stuff, pushed some shows off that I have recorded because they could certainly be used to help at this time, but we're focused on different things at this time. And so, but then the future, what will the future look like? And so again, that's why Signpost is the new name of this video. But as I think about that, I want to take you back to what happened when Jesus died. On Friday, he died. He was dead. It's done. He said it's finished, and we look back at that and say, "Oh, it's finished." But he came back to life and all that. But when he said it is finished, he knew what he meant. The Father knew what he meant. The Spirit knew what he meant. But everybody else thought it's done. It's over. This rebellion, whatever you want to call it, it's over with, and it's finished. So let's just figure out what we're going to do next, which is nothing that we've been doing for the last three and a half years with this man of his ministry. Sunday, Jesus came back from the dead. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But that day between Good Friday and Resurrection Sunday, we call it Silent Saturday. But it was not silent for Jesus. Jesus was at work. There's a strange passage in Peter's letter that says that he went to Hades. He preached in Hades. He preached to the prisoners to set them free. And there's a lot of debate about what that meant and everything. And there's just not enough for us truly to unpack all that. But this is what we can say. Jesus was at work. When he died on the cross, he was still at work to extend the gospel, to share the gospel, to share who he was, what God was doing, even in that moment, even in the midst of his death. And so as we think about that during this silent time where, in a sense, I mean, the church is not dead. The church, I believe, will come back stronger over time. We have to figure this out. But that's a part of where we are right now, is that, in a sense, the church, what was the church, there is a stopping point. It is finished. The church going forward will be different. There's some research right now, and I'm interested to get my hands on it, about the differences in how the giving and church budgets changed so much after the Great Depression. And some are saying, what can we learn from that? So I'm interested to get my hands on some of that in the coming days or weeks as that becomes available. But what's true is that whatever was happening before March the 15th, which is the last Sunday our church met in person, that's finished. And whatever's going to happen is not yet here because we're not back together yet. So this is our Silent Saturday. If we put this in the timeline of those 3 days of Jesus, this is our Silent Saturday. But if Jesus was not just lying in a grave doing nothing, then what can we do now to prepare for the future? And because we know that Jesus did rise from the dead, and because he rose from the dead, everything was new. Everything. The expectation of the disciples, the understanding of the Romans, the challenge for Pilate, the challenge for the high priest of Israel, all of those things were new, and it is still new today. I mean, our calendar has changed in part because of a man who was born before 0 BC, but before somewhere around 467 BC, and now in the year of our Lord. Calendars don't change randomly for things. French Revolution, yes, they tried to change it, but that didn't last. The Chinese calendar, the Hebrew calendar, those are there. But we are in the year of our Lord, AD, Anno Domini, that because Jesus came back from the dead, he changed everything. Everything was new. So I don't know exactly what the newness is going to look like when we come back, but it will be new. It must be new. And so this is our Silent Saturday time. This is our time to prepare for whatever that newness might be, because only the churches that prepare are truly going to survive going forward. Any church that I truly believe in my heart that God is doing something new, and any church that just says, we can just go back to the way it was, I don't think people are going to go for that. We've learned some things about technology as a church. We've learned some other things. And so how do we blend that? Most of you watching this, you will be watching this on your phone. or on your laptop or whatever else. There's somebody watching right now, for instance. And when this video is done, they're going to turn off this video and then they're going to go have a conversation with a person face to face. So we have bridged that gap between the digital to the personal, to watching something online and showing it to others and then getting face to face. Some churches have been doing that for years. All churches need to do that now. So how do we bridge that gap between I'm watching online, but I want to be a part of a community? That's part of what we need to talk about. That's part of what we do. So the why is because Jesus said so. The why is Jesus has given us his promise. Jesus has shared with us his purpose, and Jesus has given us his priority to make disciples. The what is, follow me. That's what Jesus said. The what is love God, love others, love one another, the great commandment and the new commandment. The what is to make disciples by going and baptizing and teaching. That's the why and the what, but the how, he leaves up to us, and the how will be different. So again, I would encourage you to join us for Sunday night, 6 o'clock, about an hour long on Zoom. If you would like to be a part of that, you do need to email the church, fairfaxmobaptistchurch @gmail.com, because I must send you an invitation for that. But if you'd like to be a part of those discussions on how we move forward as a church, I certainly invite you and encourage you to email and to do that. We only had a handful yesterday, but it was good discussion, and it was also good to hear one another's voices and to see one another for some that hadn't seen each other in a while. So that's an encouraging thing as well. So read through the book of Acts, or glance through the book of Acts at a minimum, and say, well, what was the early church doing? And what can we take from that? It's different now, certainly, but in some ways it's not, because guess what the early church did? They didn't go to a building. They met in homes. And that's what we have to do now, even if it's with our own family. So in some ways, we've returned to the very time of the establishment of the church. And look how successful they were. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it can be just as successful for us if we will just keep our mind on the why, focus on the what, and figure out the how God wants us to do it. So until tomorrow, I bid you a farewell.